Looking at this photograph of workers leaving a massive industrial plant at the end of their shift, we see the traditional standard of employment in the UK. Heavy primary industries dominated the economy, and the workforce was almost entirely male, operating on rigid, inflexible hours. Over the last few decades, those heavy engineering and shipbuilding jobs saw a steep decline as manufacturing moved overseas. This photograph illustrates the next major shift: the increase in the number of women entering the workforce. Because many of these employees were of childbearing age, they were often simultaneously managing domestic and family responsibilities, creating a new structural demand for a balance between career and home life that the old system couldn't provide. Concurrently, the tertiary or service sector experienced huge growth. Industries like tourism and call centers created hundreds of thousands of jobs, which rely heavily on part-time and seasonal positions to function. With heavy industry vanishing and the workforce diversifying, the traditional 9-to-5 job for life became increasingly rare. To remain competitive and attract these new types of workers, organizations had to move away from rigid schedules and begin experimenting with how work is actually structured. The first major adaptation was letting people change when they actually worked. Today, more than half of employees in the UK work variable hours from week to week. For some, it's a voluntary choice to improve their lifestyle, while for others it's a necessity because full-time roles simply aren't available. Companies also introduced job sharing, where 2 or more people split the responsibilities of a single full-time role. They divide the hours and receive pro rata pay, meaning they earn a wage mathematically proportional to the exact amount of time they work. This timeline graphic shows how flexi-time operates. Staffs must work contracted hours, but can slide their shifts start and finish times. But notice the locked block in the middle. This core time is the mandatory peak period requiring everyone's presence. Giving staff control over their schedule allows them to handle personal arrangements, like picking up kids or going to a medical appointment with minimal disruption, while core time ensures the business maintains full coverage when customer demand is highest. Once businesses solved the problem of when people work, they tackled where they work. The idea of an assigned permanent desk is rapidly disappearing. Through home working, employees undertake their primary duties at their own house. They only visit the corporate office occasionally for specific meetings or collaborative tasks. To accommodate these occasional visits, offices use a system called hot desking, as seen in this floor plan. Instead of permanent setups, these are shared workstations that remote workers must book in advance before coming into the building. Teleworking takes this geographic freedom to its extreme. By relying entirely on modern information technology, staff can work on the go, from a passenger train, from an airport lounge, or anywhere with a connection. Severing the physical tether to a company building turns a job into a set of tasks you complete, rather than a destination you travel to every day. To make sense of all these scattered, flexible practices, businesses use a structural blueprint developed by writer Charles Handy, dividing their staff into 3 distinct tiers. The solid center ring is the core workforce, essential, permanent managers holding critical expertise, receiving high pay. Surrounding them, a flexible middle ring of temporary workers handles peak activity. Finally, an outermost ring of outsourced contractors handles non-core services, avoiding long-term benefit costs. This 3-tiered architecture allows companies to expand and contract their labor costs efficiently, surviving economic downturns without carrying the heavy financial burden of a massive, permanent staff. Cutting physical office space directly saves on rent. Similarly, utilizing non-core staff eliminates the need to pay out sickness benefits, pension contributions, and redundancy packages. For employers, the financial upside is massive. The employees benefit too. The ability to balance a career with childcare and social activities typically results in a workforce that is happier, less stressed, and more motivated. Skeptical, but relying heavily on a temporary, non-core workforce creates serious vulnerabilities. Without long-term job security, staff are far less likely to be committed to the organization's overarching goals, often leaving them feeling undervalued and vulnerable. This lack of commitment drives high staff turnover. The human resources department easily becomes paralyzed by an endless, costly loop of recruitment and basic induction training, leaving them unable to focus on long-term staff development. The ultimate risk falls on the business itself. When staff constantly cycle in and out, there is no continuity. customers interact with different people every time, which leads to inconsistent service, a degraded customer experience, and potentially lost market share. Contemporary working practices offer individuals vast personal freedom and give corporations enormous cost efficiency. However, without rigorous management to maintain workplace morale, that flexibility risks damaging the very company